Hello, everybody, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new, I am a diagnosed narcissist. But before I say the things that I'm going to say in this video, keep in mind that I am not a licensed professional. So, with that out of the way, as a narcissist, there is another disorder that I see people slowly, plaster over NPD where it doesn't, deserve to be. Don't get me wrong, I can understand where a lot of, these misconceptions come from. I mean, sure, if it happens, yes, there is a little bit of overlap, but these disorders are actually extremely different. What other disorder am I talking about? I'm talking about bipolar disorder. So, when people think of a narcissist, they think of somebody that is, so full of themselves, so arrogant, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, that is definitely the image and persona that a lot of us, do want to put on. But you know what? It's all fake. I think underneath, and you'll see me say this in a lot of videos, underneath that persona of grandiosity is either complete shame or nothingness or complete, self-hatred and whatnot. So if you live your life as a narcissist, and I talk from my own experiences, you're basically doing everything in your capacity to try and, you know, I guess essentially like, not break down. I guess go watch my video on narcissistic collapse if you want me to go more like in depth towards that. So if I'm honest, if I'm being honest, it is irritating as fuck to be a narcissist, feeling so empty, feeling so full of shame, feeling so full of hate for myself and the entire world, and just seeing everything as, stupid and whatnot. So, for the most part, I am trying to keep myself well afloat. I try my best not to be as confrontational to other people compared to how I might have been in the past and whatnot before, receiving help, trying to better myself in any sort of way. I mean, I still feel hopeless as always, but, you know, trying, because that's what people do in this dumb, stupid world. We cope. But anyway, so I think where a lot of the misconceptions come from within like bipolar disorder is that, okay, from what I understand, bipolar is a mood disorder. So going from extreme shifts of, let's say, complete highs or complete lows and whatnot. That's why when people talk about bipolar, often they talk about people going through like manic episodes as if these people are, in a trance or living some sort of like fairy tale sort of like delusion. Maybe you could say the same thing about narcissistic people wanting to live in our, made up, grandiose like sense of self or whatever, like this image of our superiority that we constantly want to, live in. But I think this is what separates bipolar being a mood disorder and a narcissistic personality disorder being like a personality disorder in and of itself. Because, when it comes to the identity disturbance in having a narcissistic personality, the superiority is in fact a compensation. And, I'm giving a real depiction of like NPD here. So, you know, if you don't like that, then honestly, I think you haven't looked into it like much enough. Go watch my other videos for like a more like realistic depiction because oh well, how can a narcissist ever feel insecure? How can like when people say stupid things like that, then like okay, they did not touch on this, this kind of thing like whatsoever. So I guess yeah, I'll just throw that in there like that's all garbage. I think in a lot of my videos, I've explained that essentially, if you're a narcissist or if you're a cluster B individual in general, so like any other one of those like personality disorders, identity disturbance is a huge thing. Not knowing who you are, or like constantly like waking up every single day, understanding how you work as a person. And yeah, everybody thinks, oh my gosh, everybody does that, whatever, or something like that. But I mean, I did say in my last video that like yeah, okay, I don't know how to explain not having a sense of self to like anybody else. Well, I can attempt. I've done it through like a number of videos on here that you can go check out. But I think like one of the quick definitions that I do like is that I think okay, the reason why narcissistic people, despite the notion of showing like a narcissistic image, can be insecure is because there's a battle in self-esteem. So constantly, I want to feel superior. I don't think I'm superior, but I want to feel superior. So I've spent my entire life trying to craft this persona that I am better than everybody, or I don't need to care about other people and what they think because I should be king, I should be God, whatever, all that kind of stuff. So if you have this superior part of you and this inferior part of you constantly like duking it out, like how do you know who you actually are? Because, okay, a key thing as well in cluster B disorders is this notion of splitting, which is basically complete black and white thinking. So for a narcissist such as myself, I only exist in periods where I either feel, such as the names, the name of the disorder suggests, such as I would feel narcissistic, for example, and that's all that exists within me. Or I crash and I split on myself. I think that's a key like distinction between BPD splitting and NPD splitting, where you can see. Well, don't get me wrong, I can obviously more so split with other people as well, which is why it makes relationships with other people quite difficult. But like I'm saying that like generally speaking, when you think of splitting, you think of what somebody that has BPD, you know, somebody that has BPD, what they do in a relationship where they see somebody as like all or nothing, good or bad, quote unquote. I think that's what I do to myself constantly because in my mind, I hype up this feeling of superiority and it all comes crashing down until basically I keep repeating, the same cycle. So, which is why I actually wanted to point out that I don't relate to being manic whatsoever. Like, I might be able to confuse myself for the time being that, like, I'm very much, like superior and whatnot. But yes, again, what separates bipolar disorder and NPD is that from the looks of it, bipolar disorder is a legitimate, like mood disorder where, they're really in this trance of like, oh, feeling super happy or whatever, or like, doing like impulsive stuff or whatever. That's why they take medication to, I don't know, reduce the chemistry going on in there, like the brain chemistry going on there. I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'm going to tell you this. I don't feel anything. And in my complete like moments of joy, everything is you know, absolutely fleeting. Even within like my narcissism, it might temporarily relief and like soothe my, overwhelming feelings of like deep down insecurity. Because if not for the insecurity, kind of like what I keep saying, it's ultimately just, nothingness and feeling like I ultimately don't exist whatsoever because I have no stable sense of self. There is no me. So when I think about it, if I were with somebody with like bipolar disorder, we might not necessarily get along, to be honest, because I think the one reason why a lot of people will assume or like might interpret that a narcissist has bipolar disorder is because okay, sure. When we take that bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, and when you consider the notion that what cluster B individuals have is, poor emotional dysregulation. Yeah, you can see this overlap happening. Whereas, okay, this bipolar person seems completely out of control. This person with poor emotional regulation doesn't seem to know what they're doing, and they seem like they're on, they're leaving a trail of fire everywhere they go. Obviously, that's exaggeration, not, not contributing to like the stigma and whatnot. But this is a personality disorder that is a rapid shift in moods, I guess, for somebody with, like bipolar disorder. And maybe I shouldn't say this because it would sound like super, super like ignorant. But when I think of people with bipolar disorder, like maybe it would be nice to genuinely, like feel happy, quote unquote. Because I think, like, as a narcissist, I don't know what true, genuine happiness feels like. So I don't understand being in this, like, extremely like manic episode or this like manic sort of like state. Because if I'm not feeling any emotions, if I'm not feeling any like negative emotions or my, fleeting sense of like superiority, I would relate more to feelings of like dissociation rather than ever having like a manic episode, a manic episode quote unquote. So if I do think of like similarities between people with like bipolar disorder and like narcissism, perhaps just the depression that bipolar people might go through after like the crash of their like manic episode comes, I can sort of relate to that. I mean, I do have a separate diagnosis of major depressive disorder and whatnot. And a lot of the feelings of emptiness, from like my NPD, my cluster B disorder, I would also associate it with my major depressive disorder. So when it comes to that like crashing down of somebody with like bipolar, then sure, perhaps we could very much look like the same people because yeah, sure, I can understand what a fucking like depressive episode looks like and whatnot, but all that like manic shit, no, I definitely do not understand it. Like if you see a lot of my videos, I am completely drained. So which is why I think that like if I actually were with somebody with like bipolar disorder, I think honestly, I think a lot of people would easily be able to tell who's like the narcissist and who's the person with like bipolar disorder and whatnot. Because when I think of somebody, which is I get is also like their own struggle, but if you're looking at it from like the context of like my mental illness, my cluster B sort of like disorder, somebody with bipolar disorder sounds like a complete drag to me to like be around, which is why I guess I felt like I had to like make this video. I mean, I'm not offended, I guess, to like be compared to somebody with like bipolar disorder. It has nothing to do, I guess, in particular with like people with like bipolar disorder per se. But I guess I just wanted to point out that like as like a narcissist, as a more of like covert narcissist in particular, I hate people with like overly flashy personalities because I'm so drained all the time. I feel easily tired because there's no me. I don't have like whole object relations to anything. I mean, the closest that I've felt to happiness, if I'm like being completely honest, is just the absence of pain, perhaps. So if I'm doing something hedonistic and I'm distracting myself with that, or just, like anything entertaining, I don't even consider actual happiness like authentic within myself because based on the experiences that I've had in life, it seems like I was only given a fair shot to, go through negative emotions, which is why I would say that people with narcissism and you consider somebody with like, the childhood of somebody that's like a narcissist, or let's say, because a lot of these cluster B disorders are, from like an environmental perspective or like from like a nurture perspective, are born out of like, completely dysfunctional families, families with, poor emotional regulation skills, poor emotional intelligence, in general. So yes, I don't feel happiness. Do I sound edgy when I say that? But like, I feel like I genuinely do not feel happiness. To me, happiness is just, the complete absence of pain. Happiness, I guess like the closest that I would come to describing it is not having to acknowledge pain, but I don't understand what happiness authentically or just like waking up and just like I don't know, I guess like truly appreciating the day, quote unquote. I wake up every single day and I still feel like I'm drained as shit. I see everything. I'm just like, okay, yeah, it's another day of fucking bullshit. It's another day of like I don't know, whatever, just to get me to, temporarily stop seeing the bullshit for whatever it is that I'm going to entertain myself for the time being as much as I can. But, everything's fake and like nothing, really lasts, quote unquote, which is kind of interesting when I go back to like people with like bipolar disorder because maybe we are similar. But again, how it happens is just like a completely different route because again, somebody with this like bipolar like manic episode can go through this like extreme high where they feel like they're on top of the world or whatever, but essentially they come like crashing down. But I think for me what separates, let's say, in having like narcissistic personality disorder compared to like bipolar disorder is that like I feel the crashing down like 24/7. I feel the crashing down constantly. So I don't know, maybe someone can say that, oh, the because like I don't know what it's like having like bipolar disorder. So maybe you would even say that, oh, when I'm bipolar, like let's say you had bipolar, like it doesn't feel real because like again, yeah, there's like impulsivity, like there's even like I believe like notions where if it can get like really bad, it might even reach a point of like psychosis or like paranoia or like whatever. But I guess, I don't feel that because at least like my dissociation from reality is not necessarily like through that lens or like yeah, again, I am not an expert. I am just piecing everything that I can think about this topic like on the spot. So I think in like a lot of like severe cases, people with like let's say yeah bipolar disorder might have like hallucinations and whatnot. Like my detachment from reality is just I don't know it's hard to like I just feel like I don't exist. So there's no me to be on top of the world, even from like a very like delusional point of view. So like honestly, I think like okay, like that's like a key like big thing that I would say as somebody with narcissistic personality disorder, and when I consider somebody with like bipolar disorder, I am too drained to even falsely be happy. I guess not drained enough to make like a fake superior image, but I know it's going to come crashing down. And again, those are just my issues with like identity disturbance and whatnot, which is like a bigger part of like, the cluster B side of like mental health problems and whatnot. But yeah, those are some like quick distinguishing like features and stuff that I can think of off the top of my head.